Welcome to the Macdownunder Podcast for all Australian Apple computer enthusiasts and collectors.
Welcome to episode 31 of the Macdownunder Podcast. Hi, I'm Justin, and as you may have heard in my recent announcement, Matthew won't be able to join us for a while as the co-host. So I've reorganised my studio so I can do this solo for the next little while. Fingers crossed that it all goes well. I hope you enjoy it. Today's episode is the next in the series on Apple keyboards, and today we're going to talk about, hopefully the title gave it away, the Apple keyboards using the universal serial bus. We'll also cover recent news, coming events, and some keyboards for sale at the moment in Australia. So, on to today's episode. As we've mentioned a few times in previous episodes, in 1998, Apple released the G3 iMac, which was the culmination of a lot of different projects leading up for the previous decade. And one of the most controversial items that occurred is that they removed all of the external input-output data points and replaced it with the universal serial bus. Now, back in episode 10, we talked about the puck mouse that they introduced at the same time using the USB input. And it was quite controversial, and it came out in a couple of different models. You might remember we talked about the dimple that's on the mouse button in the newer models. But at the same time, they came up with the Bondi Blue USB keyboard. And here's an example of the USB keyboard. It's compact in design, so no extension. It does include function keys along the top. It includes a power button, a soft power button, which is a hangover from the Apple desktop bus keyboards that we talked about earlier, and does include a compact keypad. On the back, it includes a stand to allow you to raise the back of the keyboard up to make it more economic, and it includes two external USB ports as well. So that's an example of the early USB keyboard. Of course, shortly after that, in 1999, in fact, January 1999, the 5 Fruits came out with the iMac G3. And there was a corresponding keyboard for each colour. So we got strawberry pink, we got tangerine orange, lime green, grape purple, and blueberry, looking very much like this one. And later, of course, there was a graphite one when the iMac DV came out. However, the Bondi Blue and the Blueberry keyboards got confused because they're very similar. In fact, I got so confused that I thought I had a Bondi Blue keyboard, because one of the telltale signs is that on the back you can actually see the circuit board for the keyboard through the translucent plastic. But that's not the only tell. There's the colour. Now, if you put a Blueberry and a Bondi Blue keyboard next to each other, whilst the difference is very subtle, the Bondi Blue is a little bit darker. Now, it wasn't until today that I discovered that the early versions of the G3 keyboard for the 5 flavours actually have this translucent section where you can see the circuit board through, because I've got a tangerine and a strawberry keyboard that are exactly the same. And if we look at the copyright notice, it does say 1998, but in the serial number, the production code is most definitely 1999, even though it's very early 1999. So this, in fact, is a Blueberry keyboard, not a Bondi Blue keyboard. What a lot of people are used to seeing with the Blueberry keyboards to tell the difference is that in the earlier model where the circuit board can be seen, in this newer model, there's a shielding piece over the keyboard circuit board. And in fact, I've found a third version where the shielding does have a small piece of keyboard exposed. Now, I'll put a close-up so you can see all 3. Now, as far as we're aware, there aren't too many other variations. Oh, I might point out that this last one I have here with the small section cut out for the circuit board was made in Malaysia, where the others were made in China. But Matthew's also found some variations in his keyboards down at the Mac Museum, and he's found that the translucent keyboard cable that most of them come with He's got some that have actually got some slightly more opaque coating, but also what looks to be remnants of the manufacturer's name and numbers down the length of the cable, although you can't make them out. So there are at least 3 versions of the keyboard that I'm aware of, and there's quite possibly a 4th version that Matthew's found. Now, in terms of collecting, you'll find lots of Blueberry keyboards because, of course, the Blueberry iMac G3 was also marketed to the education market. So there will be lots of the Blueberry keyboards from schools, as well as the fact that they were distributed with the blue and white G3 tower. So lots of Blueberry keyboards out there to confuse you with the Bondi Blues. There's also a lot of graphite keyboards out there because, again, they were distributed with the very early G4 towers, but were also with the graphite iMac G3s, which Steve tells us in some of the keynotes was the most popular version of the G3 iMac. So that's why there's lots of Blueberry and lots of graphite keyboards out there. The other colours are slightly rarer, and as you'll see in the for sale section, do come at a bit of a cost premium at the moment. Now, in the year 2000, Apple then brought out the Apple Pro keyboard. And here's a good example of the Pro keyboard with the black keys. We've got the extended cursor keys, so page up, page down, home, etc., as well as the breakout cursor keys, up, down, left, right. But black keys in a translucent case, which is sort of crystal clear, still with that translucent, although this one's a little bit foggy, but still with the translucent cable and an Apple logo on the back. Now, these were primarily marketed for the G4 towers and for the G4 Cube. In fact, I think it was released with the G4 Cube initially. But they were also bundled up with the highest spec iMacs that followed the 5 fruits. So the Sage, Ruby, Snow, and the later graphites. When the G4 iMac came out, we spoke about this in an earlier episode, the Apple Pro keyboard came in a white variation for the G4 iMac. And you can see they yellow very easily. I haven't got a good example. This is the best example I've got, and the keys are quite yellow. But you'll notice the Apple logo has gone from the back of the keyboard, and we've now got a white USB cable. That'll become important in a moment. But otherwise, it is essentially mechanically the same as the Apple Pro keyboard that came out in black only a couple of years earlier. But at the same time as this was released, Matthew put me onto this a little while ago, they did make some updates to the Apple Pro keyboard. So this looks very much like the earlier version I showed you, except in this case, it has the white cable, not the translucent cable, and no Apple logo on the back compared to the earlier version. So 3 Apple Pro keyboards to choose from if you're collecting. Now in 2003, Apple completely redesigned the USB keyboard and brought it down to just the Apple keyboard, and this is an example of one of those. So again, it is white, but different keycaps and a different design. And instead of having a foot on the back to hinge and provide a stand, this particular keyboard had a stronger slope and the keys were staggered quite considerably more. The USB outputs were now moved to the back of the keyboard, and again it came with just a white USB cable and a very small Apple keyboard and Apple logo on the back. Now, this particular keyboard was introduced in 2003 and it lasted for 4 years on the market. So this was the longest selling USB keyboard at that time. But you'll notice most examples are pretty clean and generally quite white keys. There are some that are yellow, but compared to the earlier Pro keyboard, definitely remains white. Now, in 2007, Apple introduced the aluminium Apple keyboard. It was later changed to the Apple keyboard with numeric keypad. You'll see why in a moment. but initially it was just the Apple keyboard. Now, this one is important because it dropped the use of the Apple symbol. So even if we go back to the earlier Apple keyboard, you can see there's still the Apple symbol on the command key, which hails back 27 years to the release of the Apple III. That was the first Apple computer that came with an Apple key on the keyboard. So it took 27 years, but eventually they did drop the Apple key from the Apple keyboard, which I think is a bit of a shame, given I was an Apple II and an Apple III user. The aluminium keyboard, again, fairly standard white USB cable, an embossed Apple logo on the back. But with some minor variations, this keyboard lasted on the market for 10 years, finishing and being discontinued in 2017. However, back in July 2011, they did update the keys, and you won't be able to see this, so I'll put up a close-up, but they changed from having F3 and F4 as the expose key and dashboard key. They changed them to mission control and launchpad. And to be quite honest, if you don't have an eye for it, it's pretty easy to miss the difference, because 3 of those icons are basically lots of squares. The only one that really makes it really easy to pick out is that the dashboard key on function 4 on the early version of this keyboard is a dial with a pointer in it. That's the easiest way to tell the difference in my experience. Now, these keyboards still have a USB hub and USB outputs on either side, but they're very thin. And in my experience, I've seen these bent in backpacks and other things. I've seen the aluminium scuff up pretty easily, and I've just seen them plain fail on multiple occasions. So whilst it was the longest serving of the Apple keyboards, 10 years in service, they did seem to be the most fragile of all. Now, there is one outlier. There's always an outlier with Apple keyboards and Apple things, and it's this one here. So in 2009, for a short period of time, your iMac came with this smaller condensed USB keyboard. So again, white USB cable, embossed Apple logo on the back, but you'll notice that there's no extended keyboard and no function keys. So really going back to basics in 2009. So I'm pretty sure most of you will have used a USB keyboard at some point, and I suspect most of the people watching this podcast probably have a few in your collection. So which one was your favourite USB keyboard? Let us know down in the comments. Now, my plan is also to follow up with the wireless keyboard episode probably next week. So what do you think about that? Is that a good idea? Let us know down in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. So on to recent news and a few things from the 68K Macintosh Liberation Army forums. First, from Davecom. He's released a new application called Sector, which allows you to edit your hierarchical file system disk images from your old SCSI hard drives on a current Mac, primarily so that you can use those disk images for your emulator or as a virtual disk drive for things like Blue SCSI or in an emulator on a current Mac. So I'll put the link in the description. Check it out. The application is called Sector. Now, user Zero has also posted recently about an application that they've updated and released called 7TTY, which provides a local shell and terminal for your classic Mac, as well as a secure shell, SSH, capabilities as a terminal. So check it out, 7TTY. Again, I'll put the link down in the description. And the last item, again from the 68K Macintosh Liberation Army, from user RFC, he's actually gone to the pains of getting the AUX3 operating system, so Apple's early Unix operating system, version 3, to install under the QEMU emulator. It emulates as a Quadra 800. So there was quite a bit of pain, I understand, from his posting trying to get this to work. So he's posted a script to make it all work for you simply. So if you're interested in running AUX3 in a Quadra 800 under emulation on your current Mac or other computer for that matter, check out the link in the description to his scripts. Moving on to coming events. And now the WOZFest website hasn't been updated, so I'll probably stop talking about it soon, but no updates about WOZFest, the Apple II meeting in New South Wales as yet. However, Retro Gaming Bendigo have updated their website and their next meeting is Saturday the 1st of March, 12:30 for a 1 o'clock start in the afternoon, but they've moved venue. So they're now at the Huntley Memorial Hall, which is at 647 on the Midland Highway in Huntley, very near Bendigo. Again, information in the link down in the description. Technology markets have also announced some extra meetings for their markets. So Sunday the 1st of March at the Darebin Community Sports Stadium and Sunday the 22nd of March at the Springers Leisure Centre. So the normal venues at the moment. Again, links down in the description. No suggestion at the moment that either of those will have a retro computer show, but nevertheless, if you need parts, it's a good place to go. Next up, the Train and Hobby Show on Saturday the 14th and Sunday the 15th of March is coming up at the Sandown Racecourse. And as you probably heard, Declan, who we had on the show last week as co-host, and Matthew from the Mac Museum are both going to be exhibiting, lots of others as well. So there'll be plenty of retro Apple and retro other computers at the Train and Hobby Show on the 14th and 15th of March. Check it out. I intend to get there for part of each of those days. The Adelaide Retro Computing Group have updated their meeting sites as well. So Friday the 13th of March is their next meeting from 5:30 till 10:30 p.m. in the usual location at the Unley Community Centre. And last but not least, the Mac Museum continues to be open every Saturday morning in the southeastern suburbs of Melbourne, and also a special enthusiast meeting on the first Saturday of the month. I certainly intend to get to those. The Mac Museum is brilliant, absolutely worth the visit. So if you're in Melbourne, please, Saturday mornings from 10 until 2, please check it out. On to this week's for sale items. So this week, the cheapest USB keyboards that I could find. I've got to say Victoria scooped the pool in terms of cheapest and largest number of USB keyboards, but there are a couple of others, and all of these are $100 or less. So first up, we have a vintage USB keyboard in blue. In fact, from what I can tell, it's actually a Bondi blue. It does have the circuit board exposed. It's got a manufacture date of 1998, so it looks like it's the real deal to me. $50 on eBay coming from Victoria. Next one up, also in Victoria, what looks to be the Blueberry version of the same keyboard. This one's for $99, so the price is starting to go up, but also from Victoria on eBay. Next up, one of those rarer USB keyboards. So this is the green USB keyboard that matches the lime green iMac. This one is $100 from Melbourne off Facebook. Next up, we have the black Apple Pro keyboard. This one's from Canberra, really cheap at $20. So rush out and buy this one. Great price for a great keyboard. Next up, we've got the white version of the Apple Pro keyboard that suits the G4 iMac. This one's, again, listed in Melbourne on Facebook Marketplace for $50. It is a little dirty, but could be cleaned pretty easily. Next up, we've got the plain white Apple keyboard. The one that was available for 4 years, so it's one of the longer standing ones. I think it's a beautiful looking keyboard. This one's $30 off Marketplace in Melbourne. Next up, we've got one of the aluminium keyboards. Now this is the early version with the expose and the all important dashboard icon on function 4. This one's on marketplace, Facebook marketplace from Melbourne again, but $25. Bit of a bargain. Not to be left out, the other version of the same keyboard. So this has got the mission control and launch pad icons. So just make sure you know which one's which. This one also in Melbourne on Facebook Marketplace for $20. Now I have seen plenty of these aluminium keyboards around the country, but not this cheap. So, Victoria seems to be the place to buy your keyboards right at the moment. And that rare, short, different keyboard, this is, it's mentioned as the Apple keypad. It's actually the short aluminium keyboard for the early aluminium iMacs. This one's in Melbourne for only $10. What a bargain. Hard to find. They do come up reasonably often, but not as common as some of these other keyboards. At $10, you can't go wrong. Well, that brings us to the end of episode 31 and Apple's USB keyboard range. Please let me know what you thought of this new format down in the comments. And should I follow up with the Apple wireless keyboard episode next week? What are your thoughts? Let us know down in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. So don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on future episodes. And don't forget to come down and visit the Mac Museum every Saturday from 10 until 2 p.m. Thanks again for joining me today. See you again soon. Take care. Thank you for joining the Macdownunder Podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you again soon.